All right, so we are just a few weeks away from Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov on one of the best cards I've seen, on paper anyway, in the last few years. It is absolutely phenomenal. And considering the fact that we've had so many big cards this year, so many great cards, this one to me, and you bear in mind, we've had Matchroom Queensbury 5v5. We've had Fury versus Usyk. That was a brilliant card, just to name a few. This to me is the pick of them. And there's so many fights on this undercard. And one fight that jumps out at me is Andy Ruiz versus Jarrell Miller. And funny enough, this is not even the fight that I'm most looking forward to. And there's so many fights on there I'm looking forward to. This is just kind of in there, which is crazy because if you heard Jarrell Miller, Andy Ruiz on an undercard, on a Terence Crawford undercard, you'd be saying, that's a co-main event. It might not even be co-main event. That's how good this card is. It is, have a look there on screen. Going to be live on the Zone pay-per-view, of course. The Zone, the global home of boxing with over 150 fights per year, the best in boxing, bar none. You can actually see my thoughts on the Crawford versus Madrimov undercard. That video is actually on the Zone. If you want to go and have a look, the link, the G-Man link to the Zone will be pinned in the comments section. Just saying, it's there if you want to go and have a look. It would definitely help me out, definitely help all the guys at the Zone out. So do feel free to give that a look. I want to talk in this video specifically about Jarrell Miller versus Andy Ruiz, because Andy Ruiz said, I think it was with seconds out in a recent interview, that when he gets past Jarrell Miller, assuming he gets past him, he wants to then go and rematch Joseph Parker. Now, you may remember when him and Parker fought, they fought in New Zealand. It was around about December time in 2016. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, it might have been on the same day. And obviously, when you factor in time difference, it would have been Saturday morning, Saturday night in New Zealand. But I think it might have been on the same day that Anthony Joshua fought Eric Molina, defended his IBF title, because he only had the one title at the time, against Molina. Joe Parker picked up the vacant WBO title that was vacated by Tyson Fury. Andy Ruiz would go on a couple of years later to win the unified WBO, WBA, and IBF title from Anthony Joshua. So both guys in that fight went on to become world champion. Now, their careers over the last few years have been, strange. Joseph Parker 2 years ago in September time, both guys fought in September of 2022. Andy Ruiz beat Luis Ortiz. Joseph Parker actually got knocked out by Joe Joyce. Andy Ruiz hasn't fought since then. Joseph Parker has fought several times since then. He fought a couple of times in 2023, culminating in a win over Deontay Wilder, and has now since beat Zhilei Zhang. He's actually the interim WBO champion. So if Alexander Usyk was to say vacate that title, Joseph Parker would actually get elevated the full champion. And as I said, Andy Ruiz hasn't fought since then. Now, he's talking about wanting to rematch Joseph Parker. And listen, I wouldn't mind necessarily seeing a rematch. I think it would be a repeat. It was a close fight first time around. A lot of people felt Ruiz won. It wasn't a classic by no stretch of the imagination. I mean, both guys were well out of the prospect stage at that point. Both guys were still fairly kind of, I don't want to say raw, they weren't, but they were somewhat inexperienced anyway, at the top level anyway. But normally that makes for a good affair. It wasn't a terrible fight, but it wasn't great at the same time. That was the first fight. If they rematch now, many years later, nearly 8 years later, I think it would still go the way of Joseph Parker, but it might be a bit more of an entertaining affair. But that's all on the assumption that Andy Ruiz gets past Jarrell Miller. And if we were talking about peak Andy Ruiz, I'd probably take him over Jarrell Miller. In fact, I'd definitely take him over Jarrell Miller. I think he'd win on point. I don't think he'd stop him. I think he would counter him on the front foot. I think he'd light him up with combinations. Andy Ruiz's hand speed is something to behold. You know, his hand speed is right up there with the likes of Joseph Parker, with the likes of Moses Atelma. And I say Moses Atelma because when he puts his combinations together, I mean, that hand speed is blistering. Andy Ruiz is right up there. The problem with Ruiz has always been he has slow feet. And the reason why he's got such slow feet, obviously, elephant in the room, he is not the body beautiful type. I mean, I've always said about Tyson Fury, he is never going to be a Joe six-pack. He's never going to have, rock hard abs, anything like that. Andy Ruiz is 6'2", and he weighs sometimes the same as Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is, I'm being generous, 6'9", but let's just say 6'8". So he's got about 6 or so inches in height. He can carry that weight a lot better. Andy Ruiz has always, throughout the course of his career, I think the lightest he's ever been has probably been in the 240s. So he's never been someone who's in shape. However, over the last 8 or so years, actually since the Joseph Parker fight and the run up to that, Ruiz has started doing this thing where I liken it to catfishing on Tinder, where you're putting all these filters on, you're standing in angles that make it look as though, you're slim, whatever way he does. I don't know how he does it, because it really is quite remarkable when you see it. That you see Andy Ruiz and you've seen him in the ring, you know what he's like, you know what he looks like. Then you see him in a picture and you're just like, okay, he's definitely slimmed down. And then he gets there on weigh-in day and you're like, oh, he looks exactly the same, and oh, he's actually heavier than he was last time. What the hell happened there? If you remember when he was in the run-up to the Joshua rematch, he was sat there with Michael Hunter. And loads of people were looking and thinking, oh, wow, he's looking slim by his standards. He gets on the scale and we know what happened. He wasn't a career heaviest, but he wasn't a million miles off it. So Andy Ruiz has always been someone like that. Now, in the run-up to this fight, I said it in my video I did yesterday, Midweek Report, that Ruiz is actually looking, to me, heavier. And you have seen throughout the course of his career, remember his first fight with Eddie Reynoso against Chris Arreola, you could actually see it, even though he's never going to be the Body Beautiful type, but you could see that he had shifted some timber. You could see that. You could see it in the ring and you could see it before it, that you were like, okay, he's not quite, Mr. Universe, he's not like that. But you can see he's definitely shifted something. How is that going to affect him on fight night? Is it going to benefit him? Is it going to hinder him? Some would say it actually hindered him because he was dropped by Arreola, who a couple of years prior had been, decimated by a one-armed Deontay Wilder at that in 2016. Retired after that fight. So you kind of looked at that and thought, oh, holy crap. I mean, this isn't good. Maybe he's taken that lesson and just decided, you know what? There's no use taking the weight off really quick. There's no use for that, so I'm going to come in at a weight that I feel comfy with. I've always said that, with fighters who normally weigh in maybe 20, 30, maybe sometimes 40 pounds over their ideal weight at heavyweight, because there is an ideal weight you could weigh in at heavyweight, even though there is no limit. Some fighters would weigh in the 220s. That's a good weight. If they come in the 230s, 240s, they'll actually be taking a bit away from themselves. And I've always said about fighters who they fluctuate in between fights, they fluctuate in weight. They say, oh, well, I weighed in lighter, but I felt weaker. Yeah, because you went in a crash course diet. Obviously, you're going to feel weak. If you gradually bring that weight down, you let your body acclimatize, you kind of stick at that weight, you'll feel a lot stronger in a fight or two or a couple of months. Andy Ruiz, I'm sure, is thinking, well, I take the weight off, I feel weak. I put the weight on, I don't feel as weak. Problem though, he's not getting any younger. He's been out of the ring best part of 2 years. Although Miller hasn't fought the greatest of opponents like Lucas Brown, and I think he fought Bragamonte and obviously lost to Daniel Dubois in a losing effort, as I said, he's still been a lot more active. We don't know how Miller is going to be after the loss to Daniel Dubois. He obviously had some issues there in Florida, I think it was, earlier in the year. So we don't know what kind of headspace he's going to be at. But with Andy Ruiz, it's like you're coming in heavier, because he will come in heavy. Like, he's not going to be in the 250s, I would imagine. I'm thinking 260s, 270s. You've been out of the ring for 2 years. You're going to come in probably in the 260s, 270s against someone who's been a lot more active than you. Don't know what shape Miller's going to come in. I would imagine he's going to be in the 300s, but you never know. I would say he's going to be in the 300s more than likely. So you're going to be in there with a Jarrell Miller who is more match fit than you, even though he's never going to be the fittest. He's going to be more match fit than you. He's going to have more ring time than you. The sharp, even though he's more a pressure fighter, but you get what I mean. The sharpness will be there. The ring rust won't kind of hit him as hard as it's going to hit Andy Ruiz. And now you're coming in after 2 years out of the ring. I'm not saying heavier than ever, but certainly heavier. I just don't have any confidence in him, because I would be picking Andy Ruiz to win this fight, and I still might. I haven't done my prediction. I haven't really gone in depth in this video, and I haven't really looked at it in depth. But when I look at Andy Ruiz and I see the shape he looks likely he's going to come in at, I think this has problems written all over it. Ruiz, this is going to be a big payday for him, maybe the biggest payday since the Joshua rematch, fighting on a Saudi show. And I think with some of these shows, I always say fighters want to get on these shows, and you'll see fighters, with the exception of a few like Mark Demari, who really want to come and win, or even come and give it a go, even in defeat, because that might open the door for more paydays on these Saudi shows. But if you win and you impress Turki Al Sheikh, you're going to be doing really well. With Andy Ruiz, it's like Is he going to do any of that? Is he going to turn up? Is he going to impress? What is he going to do? He's in there against someone on paper he should be beaten. But as I said, 2 years in activity and coming in, he's always out of shape, but even more out of shape by his standards because he's not doing any of this, catfishing as we call it. He's not doing any of that. We're just seeing Andy Ruiz as is, and you're looking and you're thinking, oh, yeah, what are you going to weigh this time around? So it's going to be an interesting one to see what happens at the weigh-in and how he's going to look on fight night. Again, I will give a prediction probably this coming week or maybe on fight week. In fact, probably be this coming week because I think every fight on this card deserves a video in of itself. And obviously we've Chisora versus Joyce this week as well. So it'll be a busy week this week coming. But yeah, I just thought I'd give my 2 cents on this. Andy Ruiz looking fairly heavy in the run up to this fight. What do you think? Do you think that it makes no difference that Ruiz is just that much better than Jarrell Miller, that he'll win anyway? Or are you like me looking at Ruiz thinking, this might not go well? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.